Only 28% of Republicans want us to continue funding the war in Ukraine. How much lower does that number have to go before you will consider what we want more than you consider TV pundits like your TV wife, Donna?
Well, geez, my wife here is very offended by the characterization of my TV wife. But no, I'm not considering that. I'm considering history. And I want you to consider history too. The last time we turned our back on a shooting war in Europe, the last time we did it, that cost us tens of billions of dollars and 500,000 dead Americans. I don't want that to happen to this country again. And I am absolutely convinced that Vladimir Putin isn't stopping at Ukraine, especially if you hand it to him. He's already taken Georgia. He took Crimea. And everybody thought, when Georgia got taken, Obama told us he'll stop there. Then they took Crimea, and Obama said they'd stop there. And he didn't. And now here he is, taking the rest of Ukraine. I understand that it is a burden on the American people to have to do this. I get it. But the burden is not going to get less. It's going to be greater. And by the way, if we don't do it and we don't take leadership in the world, China will. And they are. Because who do you think is paying for that war for Russia? It's not Russia. It's China. China's paying for it. And guess who else is in the party now? Now we saw Putin went over and saw Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Is getting missile technology from him. Oh, let me tell you who else is in the band. Iran. The Ayatollah and the mullahs are giving sophisticated drone technology to the Russians to kill Ukrainians. It is not convenient, ever, to be the freest and richest nation in the world. But if we want to stay the freest and richest nation, and we don't want to have to give another 500,000 or more American lives to keep it that way, it's a pretty good investment, in my view, to spend less than 5% of our 1 year military budget. That's what we've spent so far in Ukraine. Less than 5% of what we spent in 1 year on the Pentagon. And we have degraded, the Ukrainians have degraded the Russian army by 50%. The tanks, the artillery that they're spending, they are shooting 60,000 artillery shells a day into Ukraine. They're not going to be able to keep that up. And we need, in my view, to give the Ukrainians what they need to be able to win the war. Because if they don't, if we walk away now, we'll be fighting the Chinese in Taiwan. And you may be against going to Taiwan too. And if you are, I want you to remember this. You have a cell phone? Okay. You have a thermostat at home that controls the heat and the cooling in your house? Right, yeah, right. We've got every one of the things that we use when we start our cars, no matter where we go and what we do, has semiconductors. And 2/3 of the world's semiconductors are manufactured in Taiwan. So here's the question. Do we want the Communist Party of China to be controlling who gets those semiconductors? Because let me tell you where we'll be. The back of the line. And then everyone's going to say, how the hell did the government let this happen? I can't start my car. I can't heat or cool my house. I can't work my cell phone. I can't communicate with my kids who are far away because now the Chinese have all the semiconductors. And then everybody will be complaining about why we dropped the ball on it. These are hard choices. And if we give up leadership in the world, let me tell you what's going to happen, everybody. The vacuum will not remain. The Chinese will fill it. And remember what they do to their own people. If you practice religion in China, you get sent to a concentration camp. If you want to have more than one child, you can't. There's mandatory sterilization after you have one child. This is the culture they'll bring to the rest of the world if we let them. We've never let them do that, and I don't think we should now. And they're the people funding this war. So the question is, do we want to help the Ukrainians do it now, or do we want to pay for it and do it ourselves later? Because one way or another, that's coming. And I think we have to stop it. And I know there are people who disagree with me. But leadership is not about reading polls. Leadership is about changing polls. Leadership is about getting up and saying, we don't have a referendum on everything in this country. We elect leaders who tell us which way we think they should go. And you want to get rid of them, you get rid of them. But I'm certainly not going to stand up here and say, oh, I read a poll that says this, therefore I'm going to change my mind if I believe with everything I've done and read and studied that this is true. And the last thing I'll tell you is this. I went to Ukraine. If you see what's going on over there, it is breathtaking. I went to the city of Bucha, which is one of the first ones that was invaded by Russia. I got toured around by the mayor. He took me down the street, houses right on top of each other, where the Russian army went from house to house, went into the houses, pulled out any males that were in the house, took them to the sidewalk while they were alive, gouged out their eyes, cut off their ears, and then shot them in the back of the head and killed them. And then they went back into the house and raped all the women, starting with the youngest, so that the older women would have to see what was being done to their daughters, their granddaughters, their nieces. Then they loaded all the dead bodies into pickup trucks and drove them to the top of the city where their church was and dumped the dead civilian bodies. These are not soldiers. Dumped the dead civilian bodies behind the church to show the rest of the people in town what would happen if you resisted. If this is the kind of society we want, if this is the kind of world we're willing to tolerate, America's never been willing to tolerate that. And I don't think we should now. So I know where the polls are in this, at least some of them. But I think there's a lot of the American people who believe that this world is a better place when America leads than when America stands on the sidelines. And I don't want any president to have to send our men and women to Taiwan or any place else or back to a shooting war in Europe because we didn't help the Ukrainians do this now. So that's where I stand on it.